afternoon from Los Angeles, and welcome to Stock Market Today, sponsored by Interactive Brokers. Now, on the show, we're going to be taking a look at the charts of Lululemon, following up on its earnings report. Also going to be taking a look at Infi and RH. But first, let's take a look at the major indexes. It's Alyssa Corum here with Ken Shreve on this Friday. And Ken, we saw blue chips lead on the upside today, closing up about 1/4%. The S&P hanging in there, also edging higher today. The NASDAQ finishing with a fractional decline, down about 0.2%. So what do you make of this session to cap off the week after such a strong day yesterday?
Well, yeah, we had really bullish gains Thursday and higher volumes. So I think we could call today's session constructive. A little bit of selling into the NASDAQ into the close here, but we want to just take a look at a chart for the Dow, and you see that bullish gap above the 50-day moving average Thursday. It did extend gains a little bit today, but all in all, it was a very quiet session. Stocks really didn't move much either way. We're going to end, looks like, mixed and mostly unchanged, but solid weekly gains for the Dow and S&P 500. So it was a good week for the stock market. We'll see what next week brings.
That's right. And under the surface, a few interesting names. We want to take a look at Lululemon, which gained about 8% today in heavy volume after its quarterly earnings report showed growth of 35% on the bottom line, 22% on the top line, and same-store sales, better than expected digital sales, up 31%. So strong e-commerce growth as well for Lululemon, which has now had quite the track record of strong growth on the top and bottom lines, and a breakout to boot.
Yeah, I mean, the CEO has outlined sort of a 5-year growth plan for the company, and it seems like quarter after quarter, the company just keeps knocking the ball right out of the park. You mentioned digital sales up 31%, sales in China, I think, up 30%. So, you know, they're really just executing well. Same-store sales much better than expected. So this was reminiscent 3 months ago when they reported strong results. So, you know, had a nice gap up out of a flat base here. The buy point was 194.35, and it's going to close well in the upper half of its range, and just a bullish technical action for Lulu. Now, this is a stock that not that long ago reset its base count, so this is still, even though it's made a big move this year, it's still arguably an early stage breakout here, as the company's growth story remains very much intact.
That's right, and checking off a lot of the boxes that we'd like to see with that strong volume, closing in the upper half of its range for the day, as you said, still within that 5% buyer range, even with the gap up, and this relative strength line hitting a new high as the stock breaks out, a very bullish, confirming technical indicator.
Yeah, I mean, this company has been talking about a very bullish growth runway, and it looks like that growth story is still intact, and revenues in the latest quarter up 22%. That was slightly, a little bit of acceleration from 20% growth in the prior quarter. So anytime you're, you know, showing accelerating sales when you're a company the size of Lulu, it's pretty impressive. And, you know, menswear, and, you know, just really company firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, that's right. Even going into some more personal care products as well, so expanding even further. But let's shift our attention to chip maker Infi. We're going to be taking a look at a weekly chart here, and Infi finding support at its 10-week moving average, gaining about 3% for the week. Now, this is the first pullback for the stock since a breakout, it looks like sometime in June or July.
Yeah, I wanted to take a look at a weekly chart for Infi, because it is just a good visual example of what a first successful test of the 10-week moving average looks like. So this is another fundamental superstar in the semiconductor sector, but you can see after many up weeks in a row, a little breakout, and then a couple of down weeks, and pulls back to its 10-week moving average, and is finding support. So, you know, we've been talking about sort of a rejuvenated chip sector, especially over the past couple of weeks. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index was on pace for a gain of more than 4% this week, and that's on the heels of a 4% gain the prior week. So semiconductor index up about 8% over the past 2 weeks, and a lot of chip stocks acting well. Of course, they had big days of outperformance Thursday, and Infi is definitely a name to watch in the group.
Yeah, so essentially this successful test of the 10-week line, providing investors who bought out of that cut breakout a chance to add shares to their positions.
Yeah, and even even if you're looking to buy a stock for the first time, I mean, we say just a first first bounce off the 10-week moving average is a legitimate buy area. So if you missed the breakout several weeks ago, you've got good supporting action at the 10-week moving average. If you buy here, maybe it's a smaller position than you would have bought if you were buying when it broke out of a base. But it's okay to buy a stock for the first time when it finds support like Infi is.
All right. Well, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on the chip space, especially with these renewed trade talks on the horizon. And last but not least, we want to take a look at RH, formerly known as Restoration Hardware, which looks like it's setting up, heading into its quarterly earnings report next Tuesday, forming the right side of a cup base here, now about 5% below a potential pivot point.
Yeah, so RH, they recently changed their name. They used to be known as Restoration Hardware, and now they're transitioning, really want to be known as a high-end luxury brand. They've been opening these, these furniture galleries with restaurants,
right?
So they're really rebranding themselves. And 3 months ago, when they reported earnings, the stock was up huge as Wall Street kind of embraced this new brand that the company is adopting. And I think I counted 8 straight up weeks, including this week. So it's kind of a little sloppy pattern to interpret here, but it is just a classic cup-shaped base with a pullback down the left side and a nice rally back towards highs. So we'll see what results look like next week. It could be another good quarter.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it gained over 3% today ahead of the results next week. So we'll definitely keep tabs on this name as it reports. Given that broadly in retail, it looks like some of the earnings reports have been received pretty well.
Yeah, so with RH, you sometimes don't know quite what you're going to get. Sometimes their quarters can be a little messy, but at least the last time they reported, the street liked what it saw, and I know expectations are high just by looking at the stock's relative strength in recent weeks. Obviously, the market is optimistic that there's a nice turnaround going here. So besides RH, we mentioned semiconductor stocks. Broadcom also reports next week, and that's a chip bellwether. So those are the two main earnings reports that we'll be watching in the coming week.
Yeah, that's right. We'll see what happens when they report next week. But before we go, a couple of announcements for you. First, in case you missed it, we do have a new episode of the Investing with IBD podcast out now this week. Arusha and our very own Justin Nielsen talked about the similarities between fantasy football and picking stocks. So head to investors.com/podcast for that. And secondly, we want to let you know that we will have another episode of our investing strategy show at the NASDAQ coming up on Monday evening. So make sure you're keeping tabs on investors.com/investing strategies for that. It's going to be our medical sector themed show. We're going to have Randy Watts, Chief Investment Strategist at William O'Neill, back on the show, as well as a look at ARK Invest's Genomic Revolution ETF. So it should be another good one.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. And last but not least, we have a webinar coming up for you on the 17th, all about your ETF playbook. I believe it's Justin and Mike Webster who are going to be doing that one. So make sure you go to investors.com/webinar now to sign up for that, and then you'll get emails about that webinar when it goes live. All right, everyone, that is it for this week, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.